What if one of the most dominant big women in WNBA history was offered a spot on the Indiana Fever, and she said no? Not because she didn't want to play, not because the money wasn't right, not because she had reservations about the city, the roster, or the opportunity itself. She said no because of one person, one coach. One name that apparently poisons the well so completely that a player who genuinely wants to be there, a player who openly admires Caitlin.
Understand the media constantly trying to twist the things I say into a negative way when all I want is better for women. I really don't understand it.
Caitlin Clark, a player who would jump at the chance to share a court with her, walked away from the whole thing before it ever got started. That is not a small story. That is not another off-season rumor that fades in a week. That
Leak the tapes. I've never owned the tapes. Leak the tapes.
is a specific, on-the-record statement from a woman who has been through the fire in this league, who has witnesses to back up everything she says, and who is done staying quiet about what she knows. Liz Cambage turned down the Indiana Fever.
Dealing with, a lot of disrespect, a lot of turbulent players in the change room, the locker rooms, and I'm telling the GM, I'm telling coaches, I'm telling ownership what's going on. No one cares.
She turned down Caitlin Clark, and the reason she gives tells you everything about what is actually happening inside that franchise. Stay with this because it goes much deeper than the headline. Before any of this makes full sense, you have to understand who Liz Cambage actually is, not the version the media built, not the controversy-first narrative that followed her out of the league, but the actual player and the actual story. Cambage stands 6'8" with legitimate post skill, a touch around the basket that genuinely defied her size, and a presence in the paint that forced defenses into decisions they didn't want to make. At her peak, she was a matchup problem that no team in the WNBA had a clean answer for. She set a single-game scoring record in this league. She was an all-star. She was the kind of player that franchises are supposed to build around, not push out. But that is exactly what happened. Slowly at first, then all at once, the narrative around Cambage shifted. The league and certain media voices started constructing a version of her that was easier to dismiss. Difficult, divisive, a liability. Someone whose talent wasn't worth the trouble she supposedly caused. And once that version of a person gets built in public, it tends to stick, regardless of how much of it is actually true.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Cambage has been direct about this. She has said openly that the media constantly twists what she says into something negative, when all she actually wants is better conditions for women in this sport. That is not the language of someone making excuses. That is someone who watched a story get written about them without their input and refused to let it be the final word. She left the WNBA, but walking away from a league does not mean surrendering the truth. And when Stephanie White came calling with an invitation to join the Fever, Cambage had everything she needed to make her decision clearly and quickly. Here is what actually happened.
Understand the media constantly trying to twist the things I say into a negative way when all I want is better for women.
Stephanie White, the head coach of the Indiana Fever, reached out to Liz Cambage. That detail alone is worth pausing on because you do not call Liz Cambage if you are not serious. You do not make that outreach unless you have genuinely identified her as someone who can move the needle for your team. The interest was real, the offer was real, and the answer was still no, not a maybe, not a let me think about it, a no. And not a quiet, diplomatic thanks but no thanks kind of no. A no with a reason attached to it. A no that said directly, I want to play with Caitlin Clark. I'm a fan of hers. I would love to be part of what she is building, but I will not do it under this coaching staff. I will not step into that environment while Stephanie White is running that locker room. Think about the weight of that statement. A veteran player, a high-impact center with all-star credentials, is openly enthusiastic about the opportunity. She likes the player she would be playing alongside. She wants to be there. And she still walks away because of the coach. That is not hesitation. That is a verdict. When someone with that profile and that level of genuine interest still says no because of one specific person in the building, the organization has to look hard at that person and ask why. There is a line Cambage has used that needs to sit with you for a moment. She said she is happy she has witnesses to everything she has been through. Witnesses. Not feelings, not impressions, not a general sense that things went wrong. Witnesses, people who were there who saw what
I was told, and I'm so happy I have witnesses to everything I've been through.
she saw, who can corroborate her account of events and confirm that what she experienced was real. That changes the entire framing of this conversation. When someone goes on record and says they have witnesses, they are not venting. They are documenting. They are building something that can hold up when challenged, and they are doing it publicly so the record is clear before anyone tries to rewrite it. And then there is the other line, leak the tapes. She has said it more than once, leak the tapes. She does not own them. She has made clear she never has. But she is inviting whoever does have them to put them into the world because she is completely confident in what those tapes would show. That is not the behavior of someone who is worried about what the full story says. That is someone who knows exactly what the full story says and is daring the people who wronged her to let it out. When you are that confident, when you are that specific, when you have witnesses, and you are welcoming the release of recorded evidence, you are not on the losing side of the truth. Understand why Cambage landed the way it did. You have to understand what kind of environment she was being invited into. Because the Indiana Fever, despite having the most talked about player in the league, despite the excitement and the momentum and the crowds, have a dysfunction problem that runs deeper than the highlights show. This is not speculation. This is the documented, visible, consistent reality of a franchise that has struggled to build a stable culture for years. Coaching changes. Roster instability. Front office decisions that leave observers genuinely puzzled. Players who arrive with promise and leave without having reached anything close to their potential. A locker room that has never
Dealing with, a lot of disrespect, a lot of turbulent players in the change room, the locker rooms, and I'm telling the GM, I'm telling coaches, I'm telling ownership what's going on. No one cares.
quite settled into the kind of unified, well-managed environment that championship-level teams require. Cambage has spoken about this directly. She described dealing with significant disrespect and turbulent dynamics inside locker rooms, going to the GM about it, going to coaches, going to ownership and being met with silence. No response. No action. No one cares. Those three words, no one cares, coming from someone describing a pattern of players being ignored and dismissed by the very people responsible for managing them, should alarm anyone who is paying attention to what is happening inside this franchise. It is not a vague complaint. It is a specific description of a broken system, one where the people at the top are either not listening or not willing to act on what they hear. This is the part that matters most, and it is the part that deserves the most careful attention. Cambage did not say she had concerns about Indiana's organizational culture. She did not say the front office made her uncomfortable. She did not gesture vaguely at the situation. She named Stephanie White, specifically, by name, as the reason she cannot say yes to this opportunity. Coaches get named for a reason. When a player of Cambage's experience says, "I will not come while this person is running the locker room," that is not a general complaint. That is a targeted, deliberate, personal judgment about a specific individual's leadership and the environment that individual creates or allows to exist. It is as direct as it gets. Now, what White's tenure has actually looked like from the outside raises legitimate questions. Reports and observations from those following the team closely have pointed to concerns about player development, about how the roster has been managed, about whether the coaching approach is genuinely maximizing the talent Indiana has assembled. These are
Leak the tapes. I've never owned the tapes. Leak the tapes.
not unfair questions. When you have the most electrifying player in the league, when you have pieces around her, and when the results still feel inconsistent and the internal atmosphere still feels unsettled, at some point the conversation has to turn to the person in charge of that environment. Cambage is not having a careful, PR-managed conversation about this. She's putting the name on the record and making sure that when people ask why she turned down the Fever, there is no ambiguity about where to look. That level of directness, from someone who also says she has witnesses and welcomes the release of recorded evidence, is not the behavior of someone who is guessing. It is the behavior of someone who knows exactly what she is talking about and is done pretending otherwise. Here is the part of this story that tends to get lost in the noise around Cambage and White, and it is arguably the most important part. What is happening here is not just about one player turning down one team. It is about what that rejection reveals about the environment surrounding the best player in women's basketball right now. Caitlin Clark is performing at an extraordinary level. She is making players around her better, carrying an enormous competitive load, and doing it with a professionalism and intensity that commands genuine respect. On the court, what she is doing is not in question, but off the court, the environment built around her is actively costing her. Liz Cambage wants to play with Caitlin Clark. She said so. She is enthusiastic about it. A veteran center with post presence, experience, and the ability to draw defensive attention and open the floor in ways no one currently on that roster can, wants to come in and contribute alongside Clark. That is exactly the kind of addition the Fever need. And they cannot have it, because the coaching environment is driving it away before it even starts. That is the painful reality that Cambage's rejection makes impossible to look away from. Clark is not the problem. She has never been the problem.
I was told, and I'm so happy I have witnesses to everything I've been through.
Players who would help her most are looking at what surrounds her and making the calculation that the opportunity is not worth the environment. That is a direct cost being paid by the most valuable player on that roster. Clark deserves a supporting cast that matches her level. She deserves a coaching environment that attracts talent instead of repelling it. And right now, by every visible measure, she is not getting that. Cambage is not alone in what she is describing. She is the most vocal, the most direct, the most public about it, but she is not an outlier. She is the latest voice in a pattern that has been building around this franchise for a while now. The quiet frustrations that find their way into interviews. The loaded non-answers when reporters ask about the coaching staff. The players who were supposed to be part of Indiana's future who ended up somewhere else entirely. The body language in games that tells a story the post-game quotes carefully avoid. Locker rooms do not develop tension by accident. Players do not turn down opportunities at franchises for no reason. There is always a pattern, and the pattern always points somewhere. Right now, with Indiana, it is pointing at the same place Cambage is pointing. And when you have multiple signals from multiple directions, all converging on the same conclusion, that conclusion starts to look less like opinion and more like fact. The Indiana Fever are sitting on an extraordinary asset, a once-in-a-generation player, a fan base more energized than it has been in years. National attention and a media spotlight that most WNBA franchises would genuinely do anything to have. All of that is real. All of that is working.
I understand the media constantly trying to twist the things I say into a negative way when all I want is better for women. I really don't understand it.
And all of that is being undermined by an internal environment that is pushing away the veteran talent that could help Clark reach the level this franchise is capable of reaching. The clock is not waiting. Clark's prime is happening right now, in real time, game by game, season by season. The window to build something genuinely special around her is open right now. And every day that the dysfunction stays in place, every day that another Liz Cambage says no and walks away, is a day that window closes a little further. The franchise has to decide whether it is serious about the opportunity it has, or whether it is going to keep watching that opportunity quietly erode. Liz Cambage could have taken the easy path. She could have accepted the invitation, joined the Fever, played alongside a player she admires, and quietly dealt with whatever came next. She didn't. She went on record. She named the name. She stated the reason, and she left no ambiguity about where the problem lives. The truth she is telling has a record behind it, witnesses, documented experiences, and enough confidence to invite the release of recorded evidence. That is not someone guessing at what happened. That is someone who knows exactly what happened and has decided the world should know it too. Caitlin Clark is the engine of this franchise. The talent is there. The fan base is there. The national spotlight is there. But the players who should be lining up to play alongside her are doing the math and walking away because of what surrounds her, because of who stands between them and the opportunity they actually want. The question that nobody in Indiana seems to be answering loudly enough is a simple one. How many players have to say no before something changes? How many veterans with exactly the kind of experience and skill Clark needs?
Dealing with, a lot of disrespect, a lot of turbulent players in the change room, the locker rooms, and I'm telling the GM, I'm telling coaches, I'm telling ownership what's going on. No one cares.
Have to turn down this franchise before the people running it acknowledge what is driving them away. Cambage said no. The pattern is real. The window is closing. And the only thing left to find out is whether anyone inside that building is actually paying attention.